What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to a movie Emporium flashback review where I take movies from the past and tell you what I think about them. Today, we are talking about a film that is 30 years past its due, past its prime at this point. Not really, I'm joking. This is considered one of the most influential action, adventure, horror films ever made, based on a Michael Crichton book. It's crazy that as of today, this movie is 30 years old. This is a movie that I think was the biggest movie of 1993. It was garnered, considered one of the most successful films of all time. And yeah, I'm here to talk about it because hey, even though there's points of this movie I don't like and certain ideas I don't like, I can't deny what this movie is and what it has become, which is legendary in its own right, based off the production and the casting and crewing of this movie. But as you can see, I have, or at least you don't know, but if you read the headlines, I have the co-host with me, a guest host. That person, of course, really hates this movie. That is Jurassic Park. Why he wanted to come on, I have no idea. He said, maybe that gun that was pointed at him was the reason. I don't know. But of course, Rob, who you've seen on the Fifth Dimension, you've seen some other stuff that I've done in the past, is on the channel here to talk about Jurassic Park. So, Rob, why do you hate this movie so much?
Well, it's no Zathura. I know it's the same
Right.
writer, but when you just compare the two, it's you just can't. It's incomparable, actually. Zathura and Jurassic Park. They're essentially the same movie. I know that
Uh-huh.
he kind of rewrote it, Zathura and
Right.
Jurassic
Right.
Park. The same beats, the same plot structure, everything about those two
Right.
movies. And so I
Right.
think that Zathura is the better of the two because he improved through the years on everything
I
Jurassic
know.
Park failed with.
The only way you can do a good movie is just to have Dax Shepard in your movie.
Yeah.
Just have him as the grown up version of whatever that
What
kid
was
from
what was Zathura about again?
I don't know.
Oh,
I think that was directed by like Jan de Bont or something like that.
oh right.
No, yeah, no, that movie is for a movie that's directed by John Favreau. That movie's pretty bad. I'm gonna be fairly honest. Okay, so in all honesty, or you should know because you're the person that said it. I know that you are a huge fan of Jurassic Park. It's considered one
Yep.
of your favorite movies. I know
Mhm.
this is right up there with like Ghostbusters. For some reason I thought this was your favorite movie, but then I keep forgetting that you did buy a proton pack and walked around acting like you were trying to capture ghosts or dinosaurs or whatever you were trying to do.
Yeah, I've got my
Um,
proton pack and hanging on the wall is my Jurassic Park movie poster right here. It's not
yeah, I mean
a
that's the
graphic or
most.
anything. This is
Oh
actually
no,
a poster.
yeah, I mean as we know, posters you can actually go behind the poster. I mean it's pretty impressive.
It's
You've
it's a 3D
created magic,
poster.
right? Right. Okay, so in all honesty, what is it about this movie? Starting out, you've seen this movie many times. I know you saw it in the theaters like I did when we were kids.
Mhm.
I mean, I'll talk about like what I think about this movie and all that as we go along. But what is it about this movie, just kind of starting out, that really kind of speaks to you? I mean, you're a guy that loves movie making. You're a guy that loves the idea of just the whole ground process of what it takes to make a movie. But what is it about this movie that you really like so much? What is it that sets this film apart?
There's a few things. So like when I was little, I mean, like a lot of kids, you just dinosaurs are cool. And
Yeah.
so this is kind of the ultimate dinosaur movie, even, the sequels and all that. I feel like I've always felt like there's Jurassic Park and then there's the sequels, and they're two separate things. So you have like Lost World, Jurassic Park 3, and then all the
Yeah.
follow-ups. But Jurassic Park, the original one, has always kind of stood out as like its own thing because it's so I think the quality is so much higher than all the others. And
Right.
especially like
Right.
as a kid when you're watching it, especially with the opening sequence, it's essentially a horror movie. The opening sequence is and the whole thing is like a monster movie, but that opening sequence always stood out to me when I was a kid. And so growing up, that was a lot. And then as I got older, I got more respect for Spielberg as a director, and this being one of my favorite movies of his, and just kind of the leap in technology. Like a lot of people are. I was never a huge Star Wars fan. A lot of people like Star Wars because of what George Lucas did with technology
Yeah.
and just the leaps it made in film. And so that was kind of like their defining movie for a lot of things. But I really had three really defining movies that kind of inspired me to want to make films, and that was Superman the movie and Jurassic Park. And while like my favorite movie is Ghostbusters, which is just like a personal favorite, the two from a filmmaking standpoint has always been Jurassic Park and Superman the movie. And I think it's not so much, I know that I'm sure there's a lot of problems, or maybe not a lot, but I'm sure there's problems that people could point out with, you know, especially Superman and with Jurassic Park. But there's a certain aspect from storytelling and getting lost in the characters in this other world that I think Jurassic Park especially does so well to kind of just draw you in and make it believable. That's one of the reasons I like it. And then back to technology, like it's a movie. Now I haven't watched it for a few years, but even the last time I watched it, I felt like it's a movie that you don't realize that it was an early 90s movie because it still holds up so well.
Right. Go ahead. I'm good. So go ahead.
No, I just think they did such a great job in like pioneering the technology of CGI for a time that I know it's a mix, but for what they do for that time, it doesn't even seem comparable to other films made around that era.
The thing about this movie that sets itself apart was just the advancements of technology in general. This is a movie that Spielberg had no interest in doing computer generated CGI for. You know, it was in the early stages of like infancy. We of course know that a year is either the year or the year before that, Terminator 2 kind of upped the ante with what it could do. But the idea of bringing real life, I don't know if you watched the Disney Plus ILM document. I bring this up like for the last three things I've done. They did a 4-part ILM documentary about just kind of the nature of the progression of how ILM was formed, how it came to be what it is, and now how it is what it is. And the one of the big segments they talk about is there are two individuals. One's named Steve Spaz Williams, and the other one is Mark Dippe. They are two individuals who worked for ILM. Steve Williams hasn't really worked on much since I can't remember what film it was. But the thing that they did is they were able to break the issue of how to make a T-Rex walk or chase Gallimimuses and stuff like that. And they showed it to Steven Spielberg, and Steven Spielberg's like, you know, trust and Dennis Muren, and of course Stan Winston. They of course were going to do some like Harryhausen stuff when it came to like the stop motion and stuff like that. But it was these two individuals that really kind of defined what this movie would become. But even going beyond that, this is a movie that just kind of was a landmark film on a technical level, and that's why it's so beloved. You know, whether it be like the escape of the T-Rex scene with, you know, that sequence in the middle to the very end with like the raptor in the kitchen sequence stuff. It's a movie that defies logic and reasoning when it comes to how we were at one point all about sets and, you know, building models and stuff like that, to now being similar like Pixar, to now being able to completely define a reality on the computer screen. Because as you're aware, I don't know if you're aware, this movie doesn't have a lot of CGI. I think it has like a total of like 8 minutes of CGI total in the whole entire movie. But because of what it's doing in 1993, it's kind of remarkable in a lot of respects. But I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I've seen some people on YouTube do like remakes of the scenes of the CGI, and like people that are very talented, and especially like the one where you see the full T-Rex during the first time you see it walking out, and they're able to improve things, but it's kind of crazy that it's not like total difference like you would think of somebody redoing like Tron effects or something.
Right.
So it's just amazing what they were able to do and what still holds up in that. And of course, like them balancing that with all the animatronics is what I think gives it that real feeling that sometimes I think are missing from movies today, where everything is CGI. And so I think it was a really great balance of using a lot of real elements and using CGI to enhance those where it would be needed to, you know, tell the story a little better, make it feel a little more realistic, rather than just saying, well, we can do everything CGI. I think that's another reason why I think I like this movie, and then and older movies in general that can incorporate CGI that well, that they
Mhm.
do it in a balanced way where it just makes the movie feel more real and you can connect to it, and the actors seem like they're actually, a little kid looking at this gigantic T-Rex head coming down is going to be have a better performance than somebody looking at a tennis ball. But
It's just really impressive. Like I said, they were the technology and the stuff they had to do and how many problems. This is ironically it's not to the extent of Jaws when it comes to Spielberg and his trying to make things work properly, because as we know, Jaws, the shark itself, Bruce, didn't work, and then they were having trouble with the rain and the T-Rex head because it kept malfunctioning. It makes me surprised and almost kind of makes me laugh a little bit, because the best I talked about this, and I think Raiders of the Lost Ark, some of the best movies that have been created have had so many issues, whether it be Star Wars or Raiders of the Lost Ark or Jaws or Terminator 2, or you can go on and on and on, Jurassic Park, where the reason these movies succeed is they're able to find a way through the problems and create something truly wholly unique. Titanic, great example of a movie that had a lot of issues when it came to the filming and the cast and crew. The Abyss is a great example of just issues, and Jurassic Park was they were doing was like giant dinosaurs that were robotic, and they had to find a way around it. And thank God the age of technology and computers was starting to find its way into our art, for better or
yeah.
worse. So
I often wonder, you mentioning Jaws, it's like
mhm.
you often wonder what the movie would have been if it worked perfectly. Like at the time, would Spielberg still have been able to pull off a really good monster movie, or would it just been like a B-level monster movie directed by somebody who knows how to block actors very well, but did the breakdown of what was the shark's name? The
Bruce.
Bruce, did the
Yeah.
breakdown of Bruce push Spielberg to become, like, to ultimately become Spielberg? Like, was that a defining moment? I wonder. I mean, did he do Close Encounters before that or after Jaws?
It was after. It was like a couple years after.
Yeah. So I don't know. I sometimes have wondered, like, it's one of those things, like, without the issues, would the film, like, I don't, the films wouldn't be what they were, like you were saying, but would it push the careers of some of these uh, filmmakers? Is it like these happenstance issues actually help form them?
Yeah, I mean, you know well enough to know that, and I know from people I've talked to and people that I know that have worked on film sets, like it's a chaotic experience. It's a one small thing could like ruin a production for like 2 or 3 days. The big budgets, they're working
Mhm.
on expensive budgets, they have expensive equipment. When you're getting to these really high tech worlds of like Transformers or Star Wars or anything like that, you have to be precise in what you're doing, you have to be professional in what you're doing. And it's the same thing here. I mean, they're filming mostly in the Hawaii. They're using giant dinosaurs. They have a director who's probably under a lot of pressure, because not only is he doing this, but he's getting, after he films this, he's going to film his probably magnum opus was with Schindler's List. And I mean, it's just, when you sit here and watch it and you sit here and just kind of take it all in, yes, I have problems with my major problems with this movie have to deal more with the story than it is the production value. And it's like second to none when it comes to Jurassic Park, but when it comes to the story, I just that's where my fault. I mean, that's from me, from like reading like a
Mhm.
lot of scripts and seeing how people write and kind of seeing the pacing. Like when you look at something like Raiders of the Lost Ark or
Mhm.
Star Wars, there's like a kind of a symphony to the scripting, but when you look at this, it's just like a bunch of bombastic weirdness and people making stupid decisions, and characters kind of going scripting very well. When you write a character like Gennaro, who I think it's not Gennaro, who's the game warden, Muldoon, you get a character that does one thing, who comes off as a very professional, very knows his crap, and then he does something really stupid at the end, and it's just like those logic and reasoning and storytelling, it just doesn't make any sense. Like what happens with
You're talking about
Gennaro.
when he gets
Oh yeah,
trapped
with
by them.
with the Velociraptors, it's just like you spout out all this nonsense, all this stuff about what these things are and how dangerous they are, and then you kind of throw your logic out the window when you're up to face with the. It's just like that. That's the kind of stuff that bothers me. But we'll get into that. But the thing about this movie and what's fascinating is how it came together, because this is a very untraditional, it's a very Spielbergian movie. He bought the rights for it. You know, Michael Crichton had been a well-known writer at this point, wrote a bunch of like science fiction, science novels and stuff like that, like Sphere and Andromeda Strain, and of course he wrote and directed Westworld, which was an okay movie. But he's a writer that loves his science and his fiction, and this is a book that came out in 1990, which is about what would happen if you had somebody who had enough money to play God, found a way to create living organisms, and those organisms ran amok in a park. Basically, as Ian Malcolm says, you know, not understanding your what you're doing and using it to pack pictures on lunchboxes and stuff like that to sell. But you said you read the book, right? You said or at least you read it at one point.
I read it once. It's been a long time, but I read it. Yeah.
Right. Now, everything you remember, I mean, it's a lot different. I think it's actually more violent than the movie is. A lot more horrifying.
Some of the characters are like condensed into like we talked about. The Doctor Wu was a much larger character in it, and Hammond was essentially the kind of a combination of the lawyer and a little bit of Hammond from the movie. I always felt like the Hammond from the book was a little bit more believable of a character than the one from the movie. I like Hammond in the movie, but as far as like the type of person that would create new life like this, like basically play God, like you were saying, and then slap a commercial label on it as a amusement park, I feel like the character in the book is more representative of like what that person would be than like the loving grandpa of the movie.
Yeah, I love Richard Attenborough. I think he's, you know, there's a reason he's in this movie, because he's very talented at what he's done in his past with his directing of like Gandhi and stuff like that. But it's just such a weird character, because I know people who have money will do outlandish things, but there's got to be something down the road where, you know, they don't just create all this in a vacuum. I mean, you know, there's many people who have many millions of dollars or billions of dollars invested in this. They're creating a park, and how do characters of Ellie Sadler and Ian Malcolm and Alan Grant, who are the top people in their fields, and they're brought onto this island, how do they not know this isn't going on? Like that's the kind of thing that bothers me a little bit about this movie. And it's not like the worst thing in the world, but you're telling me that they were able to do all this in such secret that nobody in the government, I mean, yeah, I guess they do it in Isla Sonora or whatever, but it just feels like that somebody would have gotten the word out that there's a dinosaur island being,
and I think,
I don't know,
if you were in the process of you're gonna like clone dinosaurs, you would want to know what their behavior is going to be like, and you would want to get the top experts in the field to know the most about what their behavior would. And obviously Dr. Grant was like the velociraptor knowledge person, so it would just seem like you would go to these people and say, you know, we should bring them we should bring them in before we actually make some velociraptors.
Yeah, it's like making a chocolate factory and not, you know, learning how to make chocolate, just kind of throwing beans into a mixer and making chocolate. It just doesn't make any sense. But
and then inviting that's Willy Wonka to come taste it once it's hard.
Right.
Before
but I mean, unfortunately, that's not the point of the movie, is like to be entertaining and stuff like that. So I get it. You have to, through most of the reviews I've done, you have to suspend disbelief to a lot of Spielberg movies, apparently. But like I said, he optioned this movie. He wanted to do Schindler's List first. Sid Sheinberg said, no, we want you to do Jurassic Park first, and then we'll give you the money for Schindler's List. And I gotta say, like, the casting of this movie is pretty genius, just for the simple fact of when you have a big budget movie like this, and especially when you're spending 63, actually it's pretty well, I mean, for the time it's probably a lot of money, but you're spending $63 million. I'm pretty sure Sam Neill, Laura Dern, and the crazy weirdo that is, of course, Jeff Goldblum are not the three top choices for a movie like this. But that's kind of what makes it perfect, because I think they were able to craft a movie that actually took people that you would not traditionally see in these types of movies and actually make it work, because that's what sometimes where the best films come from. Look at like Star Wars, when you had three unknowns basically in the roles. It was perfect casting. But I mean, what do you think about that kind of stuff? Because it's like, I think if you look at the cast, you got Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum. You have Richard Attenborough, which is interesting. You have Samuel L. Jackson, who really wasn't a thing at the moment. Yeah, Wayne Knight, and then you have BD Wong, who BD Wong was. These are people that aren't what you call household names at this time. Even Samuel L. Jackson was not a household name, and you throw him into this high budget monster movie, and I don't know, how do you feel about that? Because it's weird, but it's kind of interesting, I guess.
It's hard to, because at the time when I was young, when I first watched it, I didn't know who any of them were outside of, I did know Jeff Goldblum, but
Yeah.
I really wasn't familiar with any of them. Not even Wayne Knight, I think, who was been on Seinfeld already at the time, but I didn't watch it around that time.
Yeah.
So to me, they were all pretty much unknowns. And so coming in as not really recognizing anybody, I was able to, I think, connect with Dr. Grant instead of, oh, hey, that's Sam Neill, type thing. Looking back now, and then knowing some of their library like beforehand, it is kind of one of those things that is interesting. But like, yeah, I don't know, like, because I associate this movie with a lot of these actors as like my first introduction to them, especially Samuel L. Jackson. Like, this was the first movie I remember Samuel L. Jackson from. So this is kind of like the movie I associate most of the cast with.
Right. And it's interesting because, when you look at this movie, they probably looked at people like, I don't know, Jack Nicholson or any of these big Hollywood actors to take up these roles. And I think sometimes when you look at like people who are just coming to their own, I mean, to be fair, Laura Dern had had her father that was part of the Hollywood system at this point and stuff like that. It just shows you that Spielberg is capable of taking almost anyone and everyone and using it to great effect, because this is a movie that could have like fallen on its face. Spielberg's he's not prone to doing, or I should say he is prone to doing bad movies, but the characters and actors in this movie are never really the problem. It's the storytelling and stuff like that. And I just find it like you said, you find it fascinating that these are the first time we really ever heard of these people, even though they've been working in the industry for so long. And I don't know.
There's just kind of talking on Spielberg, there's a video, I don't know if you saw it going around on Twitter, of him blocking out the scene when the two Jeeps are coming in front of the Welcome Center. And a lot of people were pointing out how he didn't have any script in his hand. He's just like blocking out the scene and going, seemingly off the cuff, which I did see other people mention that it most likely was not off the cuff. Like, he probably had been doing a lot of planning up until that point. But it is interesting when you see behind the scenes of Spielberg working and doing blocking, because he's one of the better, if not best, in blocking actors and camera movements for like long single shots. So, and I don't know if there's a ton of behind the scenes of that. I've seen a few, but directing is one of those things that you never seem to find too many videos of directors actually directing and doing what a director does to prepare for a scene. So I know there's a lot more of that
watching it. Well, I was gonna say, for anybody watching it, can you explain what blocking is?
Blocking is basically the director will take the actors and set them to how they're going to move within that scene. So if actor's in a chair, let's say Back to the Future, when they're in Doc Brown's study, and at one point Doc Brown is sitting and Marty's standing, and then at another point Doc Brown gets up and Marty sits down. So blocking is like, okay, at this point you're sitting here, you're standing here, you get up and you move over to the fireplace. Marty, you're going to move over there. Just try to make more interest in a scene. So once you block out where the actors are going to land on their different marks, then you can figure out where the camera angles are going to be from there. So in this scene that they have, I saw it on Twitter, but it's a behind the scenes from Jurassic Park. It's a scene where the Tim is talking with Dr. Grant and telling about his book and if he really thought birds turned into dinosaurs. And it's that part where they're going back and forth between the two cars. So It's interesting because there's like 7 or maybe less, maybe there's less than 7, but there's a bunch of people in the scene and they're going back and forth. And just to see Spielberg say, you're going to go here, you're going to stand over here, you're going to go here with such ease is kind of, it's just one of those movies. Watching any behind the scenes of Jurassic Park is a good movie for anybody that wants to learn about directing as far as like that kind of stuff goes.
Did you watch The Fabelmans?
I haven't watched it, no.
Oh, okay. David Lynch plays, I think, John Ford in that movie, and there's a talk about where to place your camera on the sight line of like the horizon and stuff like that. In order to make a scene interesting that is kind of like slow and it's not really advancing the plot, but also advancing the plot, you're able to take characters and kind of, like you said, keep them in the frame, keep them in position. They're not moving in weird, like, back and forth and stuff like that. And, that one scene that you're talking about, with Tim and Sam, or Sam Neill's character, Alan Grant, you're constantly going back and forth, but you're never losing the characters, and they're able to hit their marks and stuff like that. And, this movie does it all the time. You see they're constantly, like, there's a constant movement, there's a constant, if they need to stop, it's always in the right place, it's never feels out of place and stuff like that. And it's quite impressive to watch when you see it from just a organic, absolutely. And you see that in Raiders, and you see that in Jaws, and it's just
and it makes it to where, and Spielberg is known for this, where you have a scene that's maybe one long take with no cuts, but within that you have close-ups and wides and medium shots, and it's all done by not only the characters moving, but the camera moving, and it just makes for a more dynamic, interesting scene. And I think like Spielberg's one of the masters of doing that.
Yeah, he really is. It's kind of amazing when a director can do something like that, and when they can create a world that the stuff they need to do in that world, it just works on every level. And it also has helped, and very well as I do, that a cinematographer is one of the best kind of side person or second man for a production, because let's say Spielberg needs like this specific lighting setup, or this specific point of view where he needs like everything placed. And when you hire somebody like Dean Cundy, who is known for doing Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he's known for doing a lot of Robert Zemeckis films. Is that right? Robert Zemeckis, who worked on Halloween and stuff like that, and Back to the Future. When you work in tandem with your cinematographer, it makes it all the more better. It makes it all the more easier for the director to work with the people he needs to work with, to explain, like, I need this here, I need this here. And I mean, for a person that does has done some work on film and stuff like that, are you the cinematographer, or do you have someone who helps you with that? Or
I've been the cinematographer sort of out of necessity before, because I have worked on such low budgets that I didn't really have anybody else, or have the money to get anybody else. But I've never really been. I've learned a lot about lighting, and especially tried to learn more about lighting, because I know I get put in that position. But I've always, like, my goal has always been to eventually get to a point where I don't have to be where I can actually bring in a professional cinematographer. And on a couple of my shorts, I have been able to work with somebody who's a cinematographer, and it makes it so much easier because, like, I mean, you and I both were under Ralph at our film school, and his big thing was he called film team art. And, it's true, because like what I want to do is, being a writer and then being a director, I want to be able to focus on like the best way to tell the story and the best way to work with the actors. And I have an idea of how the camera should move and be, but I want to be able to have somebody that I could rely on that has far more knowledge of how to light it and how to like what camera and lens and all that to use. And I've learned a lot of that on my own out of necessity, but it's
Yeah.
never really been something that I've really wanted to pursue or go after. Just because
Yeah,
like I really believe that you want to find people who are better than you are to do all these things. If you're a good director, it's going to find somebody way better at camera, way better at lighting, way better at audio,
yeah.
to do those things.
Well, that's the thing, like that you see in this movie, or at least see the behind the scenes stuff. This was the last time that Spielberg didn't worked with somebody other than Janusz Kaminski. That's who he kind of went with for the rest of his career. But the thing about in those behind the scenes that the things that behind the scenes do, especially in the Lord of the Rings documentaries, if you ever watch those, that a lot of documentaries don't do but they still show, is they'll focus on the director, whatever director it is, they'll focus on the actors, but the things you if you pay attention and you kind of focus on is how much stuff is going on in the background before a shot is set up, whether it be the DP or the cameraman or the set designers or the costumers and stuff like that. There is, especially in a movie like this or a big budget movie, there is so much going on in the
Mm.
background that if you focus, you can find something new every time. And you see it in that behind the scenes you're talking about. And like I said, if you watch the Lord of the Rings documentary, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But you can see like people working on the sides of the buildings. You can see people, setting up the cars, and you can see people on the track making sure it's like working properly. And it's that's the kind of stuff that I like looking at, because it's something that goes so underappreciated in film. I mean,
Mhm.
most of the time people are like, "Oh yeah, Spielberg did everything." I'm like, I hate to tell you, Spielberg didn't do everything. He was there to direct. He's very good at directing. He knows camera
Mhm.
work. He knows what to do. He knows everything he needs to do. He could probably do a movie by himself if he really had to, but he is so trustworthy of the people he works with. He has the same DP, he has the same
Yeah.
cameraman, and it's just a tandem of working that has to be unified, and it's shown here in this movie. Like, none of this movie works without everyone involved, whether it be the director, the writer, or the cast, crew, whoever else is working on it. And it goes back to those two creators that were working on ILM, who created the movement of the T-Rex. If it weren't for them, we'd be seeing a movie that looks like a Ray Harryhausen movie, which is not a bad thing. I love Ray Harryhausen, is the stuff that they were doing. Phil Tippett, his love of stop motion, and then like I said, it's a very tight 2 hour movie, and it doesn't leave hardly any extra fat on the table. And yeah, I don't know, it's pretty crazy to think about that this movie is just 17 minutes before the movie ends is when the raptor sequence happens. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
It's definitely a good build up to the Raptors, being teased as the monster at the beginning, and
yeah.
then the monster. It's kind of like the true monster doesn't get revealed until the Raptors escape, and the whole time they're talking about, oh, you bred Raptors here. Oh, let me see the Raptor cage. And the whole time it's kind of like, as long as the Raptor cage holds, even if there's a T-Rex running loose, we're fine. But
Yeah,
as
because you can
long,
outrun a T-Rex. The
yeah,
T-Rex, for the most part, you can outrun. There's a really cool shot with the T-Rex in the movie. But yeah, that's the thing I got to ask you about, and the thing that's funny and the little bit of a problem. So they breed T-Rexes, and they breed all these dinosaurs, and at some point you're going to see these dinosaurs, even though it's like the worst built park in the world.
mhm.
But the raptor enclosure is the thing that bothers me the most. So they have
It's a
these very
terrible
violent
cage.
creatures. Yeah, yeah, exactly. They have a very violent creature cage. The movie opens up with people trying to load a new raptor into the enclosure, the cage or whatever, and it goes horribly wrong. Someone dies. I think personally that moment is one of the best openings to a movie, period.
Yeah.
Maybe outside of Jaws and stuff like that, on the simple fact that it opens with like John Williams, like boom, which is like some of the greatest music ever. The boom boom blah blah blah, and then it opens up with these guys with weapons, they're loading a cage. You have no idea what's in the cage. You have no idea what's going on. You hear animal noises, and then everything that is what this movie ends up being goes completely wrong. And like I said, someone dies. But the point of what I'm trying to make is the thing, right? Yeah, I mean, you're not introduced to. You're introduced to Muldoon, but you have no idea who this character is. A poor guy died. It's pretty crazy. But I just have to ask this question: like, where the hell are these people who are paying thousands of dollars to come to this park are ever going to be able to see these raptors? Because they're attacking fences. They're very dangerous. They're not setting up glass panels to watch these things because they'll attack the panels and break them open. As we hear later on that they're cutting through the glass and stuff like that. So what was the point? Tell me, Rob. What's the point, Rob? What is the point? No,
I don't know. I'll tell you.
It's so weird.
The raptor cage did always bother me because I was like, how's anybody? Because even where they were viewing the raptors from did not look like where guests would view the raptors from.
Yeah.
It just
they're having to they're having to feed a cow from the crane system. It's just so weird.
It makes me wonder if it was a temporary pin and they just were like, well, we don't really know what to do with them yet because they're so violent. So we're just going to keep them in here until we figure it out.
Yeah.
Like maybe the beginning of the movie, maybe they had a pin that had like the gorilla enclosure where you could see in the beginning is like, they're like, well, we got to get them out of there. And they're moving them into this pin.
Well, you know what's happening. They open the park and there's that like lion enclosure glass you can see. The raptor's coming up and just going tapping the glass with his like long claws or something like that. It's
and somebody's like
the kid's up against the screen as the raptor's going so ridiculous. I mean, I think as much as I hate Jurassic World, I think Jurassic World does it a little bit better than Jurassic Park does. But I think that's the limitations of not having hundreds of millions of dollars in production costs compared to what Jurassic World had.
Speaking of cages, the one cage that always actually bothered me was the T-Rex enclosure. Because the T-Rex enclosure, you have him you have her walking out, but then it's like 30-foot drop on the other side. And I was always like, even as a kid, when I watched it, I was like, wait, the T-Rex just walked from there. Where did it walk from?
Well, that's the funny part because you see the ghost placed in the specific front of this, right in front of them. And that right in front of them when the T-Rex escapes, it's like, and then because I get why they did the sequence because it's thrilling. It's a way for, to have some motion in like this kind of crazy sequence. But yeah, it's like, I don't think the T-Rex is 40 feet tall. I mean, he's really tall, but I think, can you imagine like the T-Rex, like, he's just like, his like arms are like, so ridiculous. Oh, God. But that's.
It's one of those things that I think that you look at, and I know that somewhere behind the scenes, they had to have that same conversation. And I guess it's one of those things that you say, it doesn't make sense, but emotion that the other scene creates trumps being able to make sense. I think we watched when we were in school, there was an editor that we watched a documentary or something of
Walter Murch. Yep.
And he talked about like the rules of editing, and it was like emotion and then continuity was under that. So it was like if it's better emotion, then like continuity kind of goes out the window.
Yeah, because there's the shot in the kitchen scene where it starts panning over where the T-Rex or where the Velociraptor's like looking at, getting ready to enter into the kitchen. And all of a sudden see a guy's hand pop down trying to push the tail down from the background. But it's like you said, basically you're in there to create an emotional moment, and you're just hoping that mistake doesn't get shown until the invention of like DVDs and stuff like that.
Yeah. And, where's anybody going to watch this movie again once it's out of theaters?
Right.
Nobody's going to.
Oh man. But yeah, I mean, the movie once again has a very unusual cast. It's directed by one of the greatest directors of all time, even up to this point. It's edited, of course, by Michael Kahn himself. This was positioned to be a summer movie. I just think it's ironic that I know Michael Crichton is known for doing sci-fi based stuff and science fiction and stuff like that, but it's a movie written by Michael Crichton. or co-written by Michael Crichton. It has all this cast. It's just the most unconventional monster movie. And all the reason it works is because the cast is on board. They created a very high production valued movie, and you throw dinosaurs in the mix. What kid, even though this is a movie that kids should be going to because it's very disturbing in a lot of respects, to be fairly honest, it's very dark. Like I was telling Jacob when we were recording the Temple of Doom episode, it's amazing what they let us watch when we were kids, especially in the 80s and 90s. We got away with a lot of crap. I mean, yes, they have their MCUs now and stuff like that, but no, they weren't watching Temple of Doom and Jurassic Park and stuff. But I mean, I guess Jurassic World counts,
but I think about, you look at a lot of the movies now and they just don't have that feeling of like it's going to be a classic or as memorable as some of these older movies. And like you mentioned, it's something that feels like it wouldn't work. And when you think about all the other movies that are big classics, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Star Wars, like they're all movies that on paper everybody said the same thing, like, oh, they would be crazy, like everybody denied it over and over, like we're not going to do this because it's stupid, it wouldn't work, it doesn't make any sense. And then when you get the one studio that takes a chance on this like wild idea, it becomes like the biggest movies ever made. And I think that it's what is lacking from studios today is none of the studios are taking a chance on like big wild original ideas. And
the funny thing about that is, and you see it, is every once in a while you'll get an Everything Everywhere All at Once, a Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, a Mad Max Fury Road, and then you get 15 MCU or DCU or Pixar movies, which I'm not discrediting Pixar because they are known for being some of the most inventive people in the world. But tell me a time when you were more enthralled by a MCU movie than you were. I mean, I'm just saying in general, like how you're more enthralled for an MCU movie than you were for something like Everything Everywhere All at Once. And that's the same thing that's happening here. Like at the time, I'm not saying there weren't other movies in 1993 that weren't better than Jurassic Park, because there definitely are. Schindler's List, my favorite movie of all time, is in 1993. But what Jurassic Park did and what it was able and capable of doing just on a experimental level when it came to technology, and what it did being creative and kind of the obstacles that needed to overcome. I mean, that's what makes good cinema. And then, like I said, you get the rest of the crap that you find every year. And it just, I mean, you can't deny it when you find that one great film at least once a year or once every so often that just shows you that somebody actually cares. So, but
there's a movie, I don't know if this is it. It's a trailer I saw the other day that was original sci-fi. The Creator? Yeah, The Creator. I don't know if you sent me that, or it's like a post-apocalyptic kind of by Gareth Edwards. Anyway, that I just thought about that. I don't know if it's worth keeping in there or anything.
I'll take a look at it when I get a chance. But yeah, I mean, this movie made a lot of money. It was very well received. It was received pretty well, I mean, for the most part. I mean, it's ironic in the book that his face, Malcolm dies in the first book, and people were so upset by it that they actually brought him back from the dead to be in the second book. It's like I get it. Malcolm's a fantastic character, but that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. And I forgot about that he dies from the T-Rex attack, but he somehow survives the T-Rex attack.
Yeah, and Hammond gets the death of the Lost World by the little campies or chompies.
Actually, I can't remember if that girl actually dies in the campy attack. Not the other guy, but the girl in the beginning.
Oh, the girl at the beginning.
But to kind of go through this movie, this is a movie that is basically a science-based movie, in essence, like a fictional science-based kind of adventure romp where Newman from Seinfeld is a very greedy jerk. He feels like John Hammond is screwing him over, and he decides he's going to steal a bunch of vials of dinosaur vials of whatever, put them in a barbasol can that somehow finds its way into the last movie that came out last year. A person who basically destroys one man's dream, I guess is the easiest way to put it. But not before some individuals who are important to their fields of science and whatever and dinosaur findings come to the park to experience what is probably the most ill-conceived park in the entire world of ill-conceived parks, by a crazy man who has a cane and talks like a good like a old British gentleman. It's just
Like a British Santa Claus.
with British Santa Claus. Yes, yes.
Come to the North
It's almost like
Pole.
he was it's almost like he had to miracle the 34th Street or something like that. But anyways, the opening scene, of course, is the Velociraptor killing thing. We talked about that. The whole opening of this thing, like I said, it's just Nedry, who is the computer guy that is played by Wayne Knight, basically selling to the highest bidder, which is the company that Dodson, the guy who will not be named, the actor, because he did some really bad stuff. And basically because the person that died is under lawyer situation where they have lawyers, there's gonna be a lawsuit, and they have to get experts in their fields to sign off on the park. So he brings the 3 top scientists and dinosaur people to the park and stuff like that. The setup, like it's really kind of a nice little setup. It's nicely put together. But what do you think about like all this stuff that's set up, about the introduction to the characters, how they're placed into this universe, the nature of before we see the Brontosaurus and stuff like that? Like, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the young kid who could be the Chris Pratt character, all that good stuff?
I always really liked Sam Neill's introduction, and
Yeah.
especially looking back now, as far as like foreshadowing and stuff goes, in that scene of him talking to the little kid, the little chubby kid, it's
Right.
basically foreshadowing Muldoon's death at that point, and it shows like his appreciation and respect for raptors. Setting up his confrontation eventually, and like how he's able to survive because he has the right knowledge and is smart enough to kind of overcome that threat that's later in the movie. So I always really enjoyed his introduction, and then the fact it's kind of an interesting character trait of Hammond, that they're at this dinosaur dig finding the most complete skeleton fossil of a velociraptor, and he just
Yeah.
comes in with a helicopter, just completely destroying their dig. Like, and it kind of goes to show why, while he is very jolly and friendly, it goes to show his kind of selfishness of what he's doing is the most important thing at the moment. And it kind of goes,
Yeah.
it helps lead into why he does what he does, and like playing God, creating dinosaurs and stuff.
Yeah, because it's funny because when you're sitting here watching this whole startup and you're seeing Gennaro go to the island where they're excavating the amber and stuff like that, and you realize that Hammond, though he means the things he's doing in this movie, it's from a goodwill, understandable nature, because he understands that he understands, because he's not a bad person in essence. He's just misguided in the fact that he has a lot of money. He has a technology company or a science company that is creating whatever, and I think he gets it in this kind of ideological view that what he's doing is a way to allow people to study what these creatures were, and the whole purpose of what he's doing is just so ill-conceived that it feels almost kind of like, why are you not thinking about this? And that's why it's great to have these 3 characters of Malcolm, Sattler, and Grant come into the mix, because they're individuals that they understand that to study our past is to study it, is to discover it, is not to pack it on a lunchbox, is not to instill the DNA with the frog DNA, which a lot of people complain about the look of the dinosaurs in this movie. But I kind of beg the question, if you look at a frog and you look at the creatures in this movie, if you infuse the DNA of a frog in the DNA of the animal, and it's in that DNA, Mr. DNA thing, the dinosaurs are not going to look what they used to. It's not going to happen. It's not realistic in that approach. So the fact that the T-Rex looks like it does, it has like scaly skin. All of them have like scaly skin, and they change sex and all that stuff. It makes sense. It doesn't mean it's correct. And the ideas of what the people who have studied dinosaurs as this movie kind of in the future and stuff like that, after this movie came out, there has been advances, but you can't fault the movie for at least giving you some explanation about the dinosaurs. And that's why these three characters work so well in that explanation, because they're able to do their best to kind of explain what you're doing. Though you may think it's right, you're creating abominations that will destroy the world, as
Yeah.
as Ian Malcolm says. But I mean, that's kind of where what I find interesting and most unique about this movie is it's a monster movie, but it also has a lot of about technology and how it can be used to corrupt absolute and stuff like that.
Mhm. And Malcolm is a good character that allows kind of the audience to work through him of the morals of what's going on.
Having Jeff Goldblum in any movie is always a fun thing, because he's such a charismatic individual, but he's also weird. So you could see him as a mathematician or whatever, a statistician, whatever he is in this movie.
Chaos,
You can see him.
chaos,
Oh yeah, chaosstatician. Yeah, chaos.
chaotician or whatever.
Yeah, and I like that he's very smart in his field, but he's also a womanizer. He's also a
Yeah,
womanizer. He's hitting on Ellie Sadler. He's makes that joke about being looking for another Miss X Malcolm and stuff like that. But the things
he's
that
like
he
the
says in
rock
this movie,
star '90s scientist.
right, and that's it's great stuff. But he does come up with some of the most important stuff in the movie, as we'll see. Is like he's so on awe about what he's seeing on the thing with like the dinosaurs and stuff like that when we see the brontosaurus. But he is also realizing that there's something truly horrifying here with like the rape of the natural world, as he says like some of the greatest lines in this movie, like the rape of the natural world. And you never thought about if you could, instead of you did, or whatever. You just didn't think about if you should.
Your scientists never asked. Your scientists were so occupied with wondering
If they
if they
could.
could, they never asked if they should, or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's stuff like that. It's like the must go faster scene. That's
Yeah.
that's important stuff, because it's like you
The
wield.
objects in the rearview mirror are closer than they appear.
Yeah, and like you wield. It's like you wield your dad's gun or something like that. It's just, but it breaks down to the simple fact that like he's explained, it's like what you're doing here is ethically wrong, and whether you sell it or not, whether you sell for $1 or $10,000. That's why when Gennaro goes, "Oh, we can have a coupon day," Malcolm's like, "What are you doing? What the hell are you doing? You were literally trying to sell a product that could literally and will eat people." When this movie continues after what Nedry does, but he's like, "Are you insane?
Yeah.
Are you thinking about the ramifications of what you're creating? You're bringing three creatures that have been extinct for millions of years or billions of years, whatever it's been at this point, and you're acting like it's a theme park with animatronics. No, they're living creatures that will eat you at a moment's notice." And
I think was it Grant that was like dinosaurs and humans are two creatures separated by billions of years of evolution, and then they're
yeah,
suddenly
it's
like thrust back to get like the alpha creatures of two different eras of Earth suddenly brought together.
Yeah, right. And you see, like, I love I love Hammond's expression, because he thinks that Grant's gonna be with him. But Hammond's like, "So I have the only person that is even with me is the stupid blood sucking lawyer." And I like the joke was not really a joke, but I like when Ali Sadler goes, "You bring it into this ecosystem, but you also have plants in here that could pretty much kill anybody, but you think they look nice." It's like that stuff you see, like when they're like
Yeah.
building the putting the plants outside and putting the construction of the dinosaur bones and stuff like that. It's just like it's such a disturbing kind of scenario that it almost feels like kind of gross watching these individuals kind of profit off of something that should never be profited off of. I mean, I'm not saying like science shouldn't be profited, because you have to have money to make science and stuff like that and to study it,
Mhm.
but just going this far as a theme park is just, it's absolutely horrifying stuff. And then bring yes, I understand he brings his grandkids into the mix, who is the target audience. I think I always said, he said tiger audience, but he's saying target. But when you're a kid, you think they're saying, how you misinterpret words, that
Yeah.
so I thought you said tiger. He's like, why? Wait, what tiger audience? What does that mean?
Where are the tigers?
Yeah, right. Are
They're
they
in the
gonna eat people? Like,
Velociraptor
what's going on?
cage.
But you bring in Joseph Mazzello and Ariana Richards as Lex and Tim, and I think they're perfect. I think it's perfect to have these characters in this movie, not in the simple fact that you're going to traumatize kids with other kids that are in this movie, but they're kind of like surrogates to us as 8, 9, 10 year olds or whatever in this movie,
Yeah.
where you like to now when you watch this movie, and tell me if you agree with this, the stuff that is the most interesting is the kind of slower pace kind of exposition stuff with the scientists. But
Mhm.
when you're a kid, the stuff with the kids and like the kitchen scene and them going over the whatever that thing is, like that's much more
Electric
thrilling because
fence. Yeah.
yeah, the electrical fence, thank you. But do you find that stuff like find the stuff now like less interesting than what the expedition scenes, or what do you feel on just like kind
Yeah.
of a level?
Yeah. I think the buildup and the tension is of getting to like the raptor reveals and just uh is more interesting than the actual like once the Jeep crashes in the tree, it's kind of like the middle act slog of trying to get to from like the
Yeah.
interesting opening setup to them just kind of like going across the park trying to get back to then it gets interesting more interesting again when the raptors get out.
Well, yeah, because I was gonna say, did you find the opposite when you were a kid, or did you always find that kind of?
Yeah, when I was I probably did find the more exciting stuff, or not more exciting, but like they're climbing the fence and all that. I always remember liking that fence scene when I was a kid for some reason. Like I wanted to
Right.
climb that fence.
Just not get electrocuted by it.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, in essence, it's like, they take them on a tour of a park that hasn't been really toured before. And I love the introduction once again back to Nedry, who's a slob, and he is an individual that is arguing with the owner of this park about money. And I love the idea that they go into like the technology of like, the battery's dead, the headlights are working off the battery, and the computer programming and stuff like that. That's small pieces and parts that are put into a movie that help sell the reality of it. But it's just the whole idea of like them driving through the park and not seeing a single animal until not only when they see the triceratops and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Is I find that stuff interesting because I find it just kind of on a whole different level of just like, this is the kind of stuff that would bore you, to be fairly honest. But Spielberg finds some way to make it interesting. They're talking about chaos theory in the truck. They're making fun of the fact that everything costs a lot of money. I don't know how you feel about that, but I find that kind of fun and
I think
entertaining.
because they sprinkle in interesting scenery, the characters, the actors are interesting, and then you see dinosaurs a lot, like actually just the Brachiosaurus, you just see him kind of walking around the Triceratops, you see it kind of laying there, but you're actually like seeing very realistic dinosaurs and them interacting with them in the, slower parts of the movie. So there's still a lot of it's not just two characters sitting in an office discussing why anybody's going to come see Jurassic this place. They're still like within very interesting settings.
Yeah, and yeah, because it's interesting, like you said, the Brachiosaurus, the Brontosaurus, or whatever you want to call them. What makes that interesting is just like the first time you see a true dinosaur without any shadow, without any and that shows off the true spectacle. And I think it's funny that they retcon that damn dinosaur into the very end of Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, or whatever the hell that movie was, because it's like, oh, okay, well, let's go off. I don't know if I want to talk about that movie because that movie pisses me off, but that kind of stuff, you see that, and then you really don't see any dinosaurs till the Triceratops. You see like the baby Velociraptor, and I think that fact too, that you get all this kind of exposition is constantly moving. You don't see really any dinosaurs till, like I said, that Triceratops. I think really is to its benefit. I think what Spielberg
Yeah.
had learned from Jurassic or from Jaws really helped this movie sell that fantasy, I guess.
Show the monster a little bit less.
Yeah,
Well, it's like
which
the
makes it more
introduction of the
effective.
T-Rex.
Uh,
It's dark and it's raining and you don't see, you see the leg or the foot come down, that iconic shot, but you don't get too many like really, I mean, up until trying to think of which, if it's when he brings the flare out or before that, you actually get the full body shot. I think it's a little before that, but a lot of
Yeah, I
it's
mean
real
to be
close-ups.
right, you don't really get a great shot of the T-Rex till honestly when the Gallimimuses are like flocking towards
Yeah.
the individual, the three characters. But I think that's also what works, is because the less you see, it's always like horror films and monster movies, the less you see of it, the scarier it is, because your imagination starts to run wild. And the fact that you don't see the T-Rex until like halfway through the movie, and when you do see him, it's like you said, his feet or just his body, or I mean his face and stuff like that. I think it's what works. And on top of that, I guess a real hurricane was coming through when they were filming this, so that I don't know if this was in the script originally to have the rainstorm with the
Mhm.
T-Rex, but you can imagine like they felt like that was a perfect example of using what they had to make a perfectly chaotic moment, or intense moment, I guess you could say.
Mhm. The other thing I was going to say about the kids
Uh-huh.
is not only does it, help the kids in the audience connect, but it's also another good character trait of Hammond, that he's got this park full of things that's untested that could kill anybody, and he sends his grandkids in there with a bunch of
Right.
strange scientists.
Yeah, and you can imagine all the adults are like, I'm not protecting these kids if they if they get attacked by a velociraptor, like
Yeah.
that's why I love the idea of like Alan Grant being so kind of put off by kids, and at the end he's like attached to the kids like at the hip.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how that plays out. The other thing that happens is poor Gennaro, who runs in the bathroom and has like one of the best lines, I guess you have to go when you have to go. And
Mhm.
poor guy gets eaten. Poor lawyer.
Eat, eating on the toilet.
All right. He was just pooping. He pooped his pants when he died. When he got eaten by the T-Rex, which is a classic scene. But I also like, there's a moment where the T-Rex is attacking the Jeep, and Alan Grant's looking out into the Jeep, and they pan over, and it's a perfectly funny, great moment when Ian Malcolm has to rub down the window to see what's happening because it's so fogged up in the car.
Oh
And
yeah, I
it's
forgot
like
about
that
that.
kind of stuff is what makes like relieves the tension a lot. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's stuff like that. It's why this movie works as well as it does, because it's horrifying, but it's also, there's a lot of levity and a lot of
Mhm.
fun entertainment. But yeah, the T-Rex stuff is pretty legendary at this point. Some of it was CGI, most of it was not. They built a
Mhm.
gigantic 40-ton creature that they could barely use, and
Even
um,
the behind the scenes of the sound of the T-Rex, like finding the sound of the roar, is pretty interesting because it's like an elephant and a lion and something else all mixed together.
yeah, and then like the sound of the T-Rex walking was just a bunch of like piano strings, and to make that famous effect with the water. And yeah, it's insane. This movie's insane,
Yeah.
Rob. It is like the level of like what they're doing to make this movie work is insane. Having a tropical storm and having a T-Rex, and then the rest of the movie is just like two individual parties trying to find people, and some people hiding in trees, some people getting chased by a T-Rex,
People
objects
getting
closer in the mirror.
falling out of
um
lockers.
yeah, right. Yeah, like Ian Malcolm going, come on guys, there's a T-Rex coming. He's like waving them on, he's like, get in the vehicle. He's like, must go faster. And after all this is happening, people are dying as it's specified. The stuff with Ellie and Muldoon and rescuing Malcolm and going back to the complex. They have this like really quiet scene where the two kids and Grant go up in the tree. They say a brontosaurus and stuff like that. And then there's a scene that just happens to be in the middle of this movie where they're literally in the cafeteria and they're eating ice cream. They're talking about flea circuses and talking about the nature of the problematic situation at hand, how Hammond still doesn't understand it. It's like, I can't believe this is in the middle of this movie. It's super quiet. It's two characters talking, but it's so
Interest.
important to the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting and important to the situation at hand, with the idea of like it's the illusion, it's the stuff you throw out there to the people. It's the idea of like Spielberg and crew talking about how this world is very dangerous, but you are acting like it's an illusion. You're acting like it's something that can be profitable. You're not understanding the danger that you're creating. And then she of course eats the ice cream, but it's just like, I love that quiet moment that I never understood when I was a kid, that it's just like, you gotta think before you act. And the more power and money you have, the more dangerous you can be. And it's just a commentary of just the idea of playing God and how that affects people in the long run, and people die from your abuse of power and stuff like that. And I mean, what do you have any thoughts on that stuff at all?
I always got hungry for ice cream when I watched that scene. And then I get hungry for Jello later on.
Yeah, those kids coming in, it's like all this food spread out everywhere. It's like,
The
man.
Jello on the fork when she's
Right.
no,
um
but yeah, it's a scene that after there's a lot of intense happening, it kind of like it doesn't bring it to a stop. It just
yeah.
gives you like a pause to think, like everything's becoming chaotic, and now you got to kind of think about what led to this point. Like, she's trying to say, what brought you here.
Yeah, because I mean, you have like everything that's happening. You also have the Nedry stuff where he can't apparently find the doc. It's apparently been pre-recorded before he's been talking to the person. I don't know if you ever noticed that. The video that plays when he's talking to doc workers, pre-recorded stuff, because he's pressed play on the thing, and it's just showing the footage like running as like a pre-recorded footage.
Huh.
Yeah, if you ever go back and watch it, it's pretty funny. But
Huh.
he the one thing that he like, so like the best like moment for the film, because Nedry can't find the dock, and when he does find the dock, he's in the wrong spot. His car is trapped on the side of a hill, and he gets attacked by, or he thinks this dinosaur that's the Dilophosaurus is like, oh, it's all friendly until it spits whatever goo on him and then eventually eats him.
Yeah.
And I got a question how the dinosaur got in the car, but like, whatever, it's a movie, but the dinosaur eats him and stuff like that, which I thought was kind of funny.
That was
um
always one of my favorite scenes when I was little for some reason. I don't know why, but just him
because
being eaten by the Dilophosaurus.
right, it's because Newman got his comeuppance.
Yeah.
Newman. um
And then
I just think
the
yeah.
Barbasol can being covered by the mud, which is like the most anticlimactic, like bringing back of a can ever. I always had all these theories. I was like, they could find it, and like how they could bring that back. And they end. I was like, well, maybe they end the entire Jurassic Park series with the last one, but then there's some after credit sequence that takes place 50 years down the line, and somebody's like, an old paleontologist is excavating what used to be Jurassic Park, and they find the Barbasol can.
Oh man, that'd
But
be funny
no,
as
it's
heck.
just
It'd
on
probably be better than what.
suggestion. It's just back here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, what they did in Dominion is absolutely a travesty of a idea. But let me ask you this before we continue: do you think they should have made more Jurassic movies? Do you think after Jurassic Park it was low? I know they did it because of money reasons; they wanted to make money. But do you think it was smart of them to even like? I know you like Jurassic World. I hate that movie, but I mean, I just feel like that this is a movie that didn't never needed a sequel, never needed a continuation.
Yeah, I think they could have stopped. Like I said at the beginning, I always saw it as there's Jurassic Park as its own thing, and then there's the Jurassic Park franchise, which starts at Jurassic World, Jurassic 2. Wait, what's the sequel called? Jurassic Park
Lost World.
Lost World.
Mhm.
There's the Lost World, and all that's the Jurassic Park franchise. And to me, Jurassic Park is like its own thing because it just feels so different from the others. And I didn't mind the Lost World. Um,
It's such a weird movie though.
but
Its pacing is
yeah,
weird, and then it has that like weird turn at the end where it becomes a Godzilla movie, and I
it
don't
doesn't.
get what.
None of
Yeah,
them
God.
feel like what you would think a sequel to Jurassic
Mhm.
Park would be. But like also Jurassic Park feels like it ends. It doesn't feel like it leaves it open at the end of Jurassic. You really feel like, okay, it screwed up and we're just gonna leave him alone. Like I can see
Yeah.
there being a sequel picking up where Jurassic World is now, not as what Jurassic
Uh,
World is, what we got, but like, oh hey, it's been 30 years and we've never touched this island, and now somebody wants to go back and see what happened to all these dinosaurs. Did they all die out or whatever? I could see that as being a sequel, but all the other sequels we got just never really felt like what a true sequel to Jurassic Park would be. And so, like, not like to answer your question, I don't think it would be necessary. I don't think it's necessary to have made any of them. But
well, I mean, like the lysine deficiency they talk about, like, that is a perfect example of like what would happen after Jurassic Park ended. Well, I mean, the lysine situation, the fact that they
yeah,
could be all killed off and be done with it, but it leads into like they want to explore the island, and there's another island, and then, like I said, don't get me started with Jurassic World and building a park on an island that has a volcano. It just and most of it just seemed like they were just wanting to make movies to make money, and of course, I mean, they make money. Jurassic World, the franchise, made a lot of money, but I don't know. It just, this movie is so tightly contained in this 2 hour runtime or whatever, and you have all this stuff that happens, and they finally get away, and just to bring all that back, it feels like just more of a cash grab than anything.
I think,
Um,
I mean, to me, that's all it ever really was a catch grab because none of them really felt truly inspired to say anything unique compared to what the first one was. They all kind of like
yeah,
touch on the same kind of moral lessons, but in a lesser way.
right. And the reason I brought that up in the middle is because when you get to this last act, which is honestly like 25 minutes long, it's probably like 30 minutes long. It's a little bit longer, but like I said, the raptor kitchen sequence is like 17 minutes before the movie ends. Is they're ramping up this to high gear where you have, the T-Rex, they had to shut down the system. Of course, the Samuel Jackson character is going to restart the system because nothing starts up. Of course, he hasn't come back, and it leads into the Raptors have escaped. And it leads, of course, to Lex and Timmy going, having to try to survive, and somehow Lex is, of course, a computer genius and able to, reboot the system, what
A
four
hacker.
other professionals can't do. It leads to, like I said, I think the rebooting of the system sequence is, it's fun, but I question why the Raptor is just hiding in the background, like
Yeah.
John Voight in Mission Impossible. He's just hiding there. He's not really doing anything. Like, where's is this Raptor like thinking, yeah, I'm just gonna wait till the system reboots and I'm gonna attack her then. Yeah, I already had my lunch with Samuel Jackson because he didn't like snakes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to, but it's so weird. But it's
I'll wait
for,
for the perfect moment and then I'll
right.
strike.
You see the T-Rex, you see the Velociraptor come out with a twirly mustache. He's like, I'm waiting for the, like that, like those pictures. But it leads to like the end of this thing. Like I said, the kitchen sequence is iconic because it's tense. It's two kids in a very small space with two gigantic creatures that want to eat them.
Mhm.
When you watch it now, with the way Lex kind of tricks one of the raptors to kind of collide into the side of the kitchen counters and stuff like that, you can kind of tell. But when you're watching this as a kid or watching it for the first time, you're like, oh my god, this dinosaur is going to be able to eat her, and she's very
Yeah.
smart. It shows how smart the kids are. It leads to like the sequence in the control room and stuff like that, then the eventual conclusion. um
In the control room, I remember there being a behind the scenes on that with the when they're all escaping through the ceiling. And I
yeah,
guess like the lights coming through when you see all the
yeah,
dots of the lights was, if I'm remembering right, I think the cinematographer was like, he knew it made no sense because there were no lights in, like there were no lights above the roof to get that light. But it's one of those things that they just thought it would look so cool that it
are you talking about
trumped.
like the DNA sequence that pops up on the
Yeah.
last? Yeah, because it doesn't like I was watching this movie. I'm like, it's so confusing. Like, where is this? Where's this at? Like, where are these
Yeah.
number or these letters at? And then you realize it's just an effect where it's kind of a cool idea of like, here's the creation of the dinosaur, and you see all the
Mhm.
letter and genomes and stuff like that. And
I think
it's
it was
yeah, it's a
supposed to be like a mix of it was either coming through like the ceiling vents,
uh
or it was coming off of some computer screen or something like that. But I remember him saying that it didn't really make sense of why it would be there, but they were just like, it looks
yeah,
cool. And
yeah.
it's one of those things like we were talking about earlier where emotion will trump continuity if it's good for the emotion of that scene.
Right, because if you think about it, when it comes to like that sequence and all that stuff, the thing that Spielberg does pretty well near the end of his movies, especially like a half hour before the movie ends, unless it's like Schindler's List or something like that, is he has a way with the cinematographers and his creators to create like a really thrilling kind of like pulse pounding sequence. Yes, I didn't say the magic word. I'm sorry. Magic word is dinosaur. But no, but like there's quiet moments, and then it just kind of speeds up to like 100 miles an hour, and you watch it like Return, or was it Raiders Lost Ark? You see it in Jaws. There's a style that Spielberg has that is just it's like unlike anything you've ever seen before, where it doesn't stop till the moment they get on the helicopter. They're saved by the T-Rex, which is kind of ironically funny in a lot of respects because they're about to be the food for the raptors.
Yeah.
And I also like the fact that they're like, oh yeah, one of the raptors is locked up unless he knows how to open doors, and of course one of the raptors
The
gets locked
handle.
in the freezer, so the one that won't open door. But it leads to the one creature that was attacking him in the beginning is the one that saved him, because dinosaurs are fighting dinosaurs, and that's what you want. And the great
Yeah.
moment where the dinosaur gets knocked into the banner, and they run off and say, yeah, I'm not supporting your park, you killed a bunch of people, and that being the end of the movie. But
Well, and then you have the final shot, which I understood later as an adult. And when I was a kid, I thought it was a bunch of pterodactyls that escaped from the park, but it's just a bunch of like pelicans or something like that.
oh,
But
is it? I thought it was like condors or something.
or condors, or it's some birds,
Yeah.
and you have Dr. Grant kind of looking out the window. And what I always interpreted that is he's looking at bird, like, because we know that dinosaurs evolved into birds, and so he's looking at these birds thinking like these creatures that almost that we went all this through, that I've dedicated my life to, and here's what they become, as these majestic flying creatures that aren't going to kill us.
Yeah, unless you make a Jurassic Park 3 where they will kill you,
Yeah.
or Jurassic World. Yeah. So I mean, I've run through this pretty quickly, and we kind of got off course a little bit, but that I'm glad we did, because it's kind of boring just to read through the whole entire. You've seen the movie. This is a very,
Yeah.
very well known, very beloved movie. So to go through it one by one with the plot wouldn't make any sense, because it's what we think of this movie, how it affects us. My problems, once again, are on a scripting nature. The like I talked about earlier, the Muldoon, kind of the logic and reasoning behind his character and how he eventually gets eaten. The idea that Nedry is he's supposed to be super smart, but he can't find his way to the dock. The idea of like
Yeah.
Hammond's like logical reasoning of bringing kids to the island. The fact that like I don't know, it's very weird. It moves at a pace that just kind of becomes a little
There's a
strange,
lot
especially
of
like
there's a lot of things that had to happen to move the plot forward, that
yeah.
like with the Muldoon thing, I go back and forth, because on one side the Muldoon death is foreshadowed by Grant at the beginning, and so he
Right.
kind of sets up that death. But when you start thinking more of the logic in it, if Muldoon is either, which and maybe they don't really get into his character deep enough to know that, like, is he just a big game hunter and he really has
I know what he's thinking.
knowledge of dinosaurs at all. Like I think even a little line saying, "I don't know anything about dinosaurs, but I hunt like all animals are the same. I can hunt any animal." To set up that he doesn't understand, because he talks about how fearful you have to be of raptors, and he seems to respect them in the sense of how dangerous they are, and yet he doesn't seem to have any knowledge of how smart they are if they're free and loose, because he puts himself in a situation where they just uh, flank him from the sides, whereas Dr. Grant has only studied fossils and he knows that. So it's kind of like if they could have done it in just like a couple of lines too, and maybe there's some deleted scene somewhere where it is, but just to set up that Muldoon is maybe arrogant, maybe a little too arrogant, that he doesn't know anything about dinosaurs, but he's a hunter and he's hunted like every predator on the planet, and this is no different. Even though it's a dinosaur a billion years old, who cares? It's the same as hunting a tiger or whatever. But
See, I get that too, but he does talk about when they're at the raptor cage about how they're smart and they never attack in
yeah,
the same place twice. I guess it does make sense that he wouldn't expect them to be super smart when it came to positioning themselves in like a kind of a strategic way to take
yeah,
down the prey. It just I guess I just feel like, if you're going, I guess this is the fault of Hammond for not, the idea of like thinking that if he hires the world's greatest game hunter, that it's going to be all safe and
yeah.
hunky-dory. And that's why, like, when it comes to Jurassic World, I know it's many years later, but I feel like they just kind of threw logic and reasoning out the window, and they're like,
Mhm.
you know what, if we raise them when they're young to come up, we can control them with sounds and clicks, and they're gonna trust me and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I just don't feel that the
Took the scariness
the
away from the monster.
yeah, it's so weird. I love the
It,
raptor sequences, but the logic and reasoning is so baffling to me. And like I said, the whole the idea of like the really tall T-Rex pit and stuff like that, it's just like, I know Spielberg is a very creative director, but sometimes I just go, did you guys like, I don't know, you're the one that's been directed more, like, I guess maybe you just forget things and you just kind of, you're so busy dealing with like the in the moment stuff that you just don't, I don't know, it's weird, it's
I
weird to
think
me.
some of it probably comes back down to the like it doesn't make any sense, but it'll look better or it'll feel better or it'll
Yeah.
deliver a more impact. With the Muldoon thing, like I think like you were saying, they do have him talk about how he knows how smart they are. And so I think
uh
doing the opposite would have been better. And that's why I think it kind of, when he is killed by them, it feels like he was just kind of stupid rather than if they made him more arrogant. So,
Well, that's why I
but it,
think with the Ellie Sadler stuff, like, when she goes to reset the power, she's a person that's outside her element. She's not been through this. She's dealing with dinosaur bones and excavating, and now she's having to reset a power system. And there's velociraptors that are going to attack
mhm.
her. That makes more sense than, like I said, with the Muldoon stuff. But you may be right. Just maybe he just wasn't equipped to understand how dangerous these creatures were. Yeah, I mean, it's more of, like you
But they
said,
didn't
if they
make
added
it
a couple lines here or there. So
they didn't make it clear enough that he was under equipped. It became obvious when he died, but they I think they set it up for the opposite. I think they set it up for him to be as knowledgeable as Grant, or if not more, but he wasn't. So I think it
yeah,
conflicts with, I think that's where there's a big conflict. It also feels like when you were
right.
talking about Jurassic World and training velociraptors, it reminds me of one of the Alien movies where they were trying to train the xenomorph. They're like, and I feel like that kind of, I don't remember which one it was or even if it was a good movie. I just remember the scene, but they ended up turning on each other so the acid so they could escape. And that seems like a better approach to trying to tame a monster where, okay,
Yeah,
oh, we think we have it tamed. But of course, the type of movie that Jurassic World was is way different than what an alien movie with the xenomorph is. But like the xenomorph and the Velociraptor are very similar in monster types. Like they're both very intelligent and
Yeah.
ruthless.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the end, when you kind of break it down and boil down to, these are things that are more of like nitpicky when it comes to my feelings on the movie, because I am much more, as people say, way too critical on movies like this. And it's not that I hate this movie, it's just I find these things so infuriating. It's like, watching a Marvel movie, and I'm not trying to bag on Marvel movies, but you watch like the current slate of Marvel movies, or any type of animated movie, it's just, it feels like the scripting pile. I'm glad like the writers are starting to get their due and stuff like that, but it's starting to feel like that the investment of investing yourself into this world makes you feel a little less logically sound in your mind, and it becomes my major problem with these movies. It's just, I don't know, it's my thing as somebody who loves the passion of film and stuff like that. It just, I see the problems and quirks, and I see it in stuff, even like Spider-Verse and Mad Max Fury Road, which has actually no real story structure or plot. But once again, I wouldn't be doing this review if I hated this movie, because that wastes my time. And I mean, yeah, people like to see people scream about movies and stuff like that, but Jurassic Park is a special movie with a lot of special meanings and ideas, and it's special for the fact that it's 30 years old. It has its own, franchise. It's Jesus with a raptor. It's the reason this movie's made $1 billion, for a reason, because it's so successful and well put together. And Rob, you have any closing thoughts on Jurassic Park as a whole, a movie that I hear you still hate, but you really want to like?
Well, the original doesn't quite live up to Dominion when they brought everybody back together. And it's not as Dominion is not as good as the idea I had for the sequel that would follow up. What was it, Lost
Right.
Kingdom? I don't know if I ever told you my idea for that, but
I can only imagine what it is. They have
so
freaking dinosaurs with lasers on top of their heads.
no, so at the end of what is it, Lost Kingdom, you see Blue overlooking that small town. So in my sequel, Blue goes into the small town and she puts on a disguise and she gets a job locally. She ends up
I think
opening an
I
old
have heard this actually.
she ends up opening an old thrift store, and eventually somebody takes over and starts like modifying the DNA of the dinosaurs and strapping guns and stuff to them. And Chris Pratt's character is like, there's only one way we can stop it, and it's Blue. And he goes to the town and he finds her in the thrift store, and he's like, we need you to come back, Blue. And she's like, I can't, I'm retired. And she's married to like a local guy, and they have some half human, half velociraptor babies. She says all this, but it's like Groot. She's just screaming, but it's subtitled, and it's like, I've got babies, but it's just like, and eventually Chris Pratt, she comes back, and it becomes like Taken, but with, or
Oh
like John
God.
Wick, but with Blue. That's what
And
I
I'm
would have
guessing
done.
that's the origins of the YouTube videos where everything is raptors screaming and
Yeah.
videos recreated. Yeah, I kind of figured that was you. I kind of figured. Damn it, Rob. No, but honestly, like, we'll end this with this. Where would you rank the entire franchise? From Jurassic Park to wherever the hell that last movie was.
Well, definitely Jurassic Park is number one. And then there's a long space to probably like six, number six.
Uh,
And then maybe I don't know. I haven't watched most of them for a while, but I feel like I remember part three being a little more enjoyable than Lost World. But it's
Alan,
been so
Alan,
long. Yeah.
Alan. That's all I remember from that movie.
So I don't know. Like I would say all the three original ones are definitely way better than any of the new ones that came out. The new ones feel a bit too modern movie, like everything CGI and phony a little too much. So I don't know. I don't know. I guess you could rank them really in the order they came out, because like the new ones progressively got worse. So those are kind of in order. And
How
then
does that happen? Like, how do you progressively get worse? That's like having your favorite type of food your mom makes, and she just makes it worse every time. It's just,
yeah.
how's that happen?
or like Star
Maybe it is.
Wars.
Yeah.
But
So you would just do it in order of
yeah,
convenience of movies.
I would just do it in order because I can't really remember between 2 and 3 where those two would go by each other. It's been so long since I watched it, but it would just be like, Jurassic Park, and then over here somewhere held by Velociraptor here.
Jesus Raptor.
Jesus Raptor.
Yeah, actually should make that movie. I mean, clearly I would put this movie at top and then Velocipaster at number 2 and just the rest can go in the trash.
Yeah.
No, I mean, no, honestly, like Jurassic World's not a bad movie. It's just not a very good movie. And the other two, the other Spielberg movie and the Joe Johnston movie they're fine. They just, when the stuff that's in those movies just doesn't make any sense. And
Yeah.
the less said about Fallen Kingdom and Dominion, the better. So we'll leave it at that. But
Jurassic World is okay. It's one of those movies I watched and I was like, it's okay. I wasn't crazy about like the T-Rex Velociraptor team up where they were like the Marvel movie. It was like the Marvel movie team up. Because it kind of felt like, well, these are wild animals, and I don't know if one would let the other jump off its back, but whatever. It became they became a Marvel franchise at the end.
Yeah, it's like all they need to do is add in the family. We need to add family into the movie, and we'll be good to go. So,
and it was like Jurassic World is so much of a rehash of the first movie, and just the idea that they built another park. What confused me is I was like, is this a remake, or is this like, did the first park exist? And of course you see stuff from the first park, so it just gave
it doesn't make
more questions. And
how
it's
did
a movie,
they do this so quickly? Yeah, it's like whatever. It's
you can't ask questions
Jurassic
going
Park.
into that movie.
Right. All right. With that said, great movie, Jurassic Park, not Jurassic World. This movie was classic. As you can see, I'm at Jurassic Park right now. Probably gonna be eaten by a dinosaur here very soon. So, Rob, it's been awesome. I know. Yeah. Blue's now in heaven. Anyways, Rob, I appreciate you coming on to talk about Jurassic Park's 30th anniversary. Right now, it's on every streaming service you can imagine. I'm sure you can find it. I'm sure you've watched it. I know you don't have a YouTube, or you do have a YouTube channel. I don't know you post very often, but you do have content on there. You also have things you do and places you have to be and things you see that you afraid to talk about. So where's all that at?
You can see the short films I've made over the years at Robert Dodrill on YouTube. And I'm also on Twitter, Robert Dodrill, Instagram, Cell Reborn. I don't post often on other things, but when I post something, I try to make it somewhat interesting. So if you like posts every 6 months or so, then smash that subscribe button and flip the like up and hit a dislike on this video. Unsubscribe. Wait, unsubscribe from here and go subscribe to my channel.
Yeah. Take that subscribe over to Rob's channel. There you go.
Yeah.
So definitely go check out Rob's stuff because he makes some great short videos, short movies, and stuff like that. This video posted Movie Emporium. That's where all the content's held. I have a bunch of videos coming out with Mission Impossible and the Indiana Jones trilogy or series coming out because 2 new movies are coming out. But yeah, there you go. That is our talk on Jurassic Park, the 30th anniversary. Crazy. This is making me feel old, this movie. So without further ado, we're gonna head out and see you guys next time in whatever video I do next. Peace out, guys.